Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Dries with the Daily Memphian. We are talking with Memphis City Council member Martavius Jones, and this is On the Record. We record Wednesday, April 20th, 2022, and we have a couple of things to cover in about 20 minutes. Councilman Jones, you are on the City Council Budget Committee, the chairman of that committee, and we record this the day after Mayor Jim Strickland presented a $750 million operating budget proposal to the council, and we will get to that. But first, you have also proposed two referendums for the August ballot that would, one, change the city charter to allow for partisan primaries in city elections for all 13 council seats and for mayor, and two, would extend the current limit of 2 consecutive terms for council members to 3 consecutive terms. The council approved the term limits referendum on the first of 3 readings and put off a first reading vote on the partisan primaries until the May 10th council session. So let's start up with why these two proposals and why now?
Okay, well, from the standpoint of having any type of charter change, we only have the opportunity to do it in even numbered years. So it's not one of the things where we could have done it last year or we could have done the same thing in 2019. We have the primary for the state coming up in August, as well as the November election for the state. So that's the only opportunity that we have to make any type of charter revisions. We only have the opportunity to do it in those even years. So this is this happened to be the time to do it. There's also a requirement that any type of ballot item must be approved by the council, in this particular case by the council, 60 days prior to the election day. And so if we were looking to get it on the August ballot this year, we would have had to have it approved by the council 60 days prior to the August election.
Mm-hmm. And in the council's discussion, dare I say the council's debate yesterday, one of the things that you said was that, hey, if we can't do it in time for August, that you're open to trying it for the November ballot as well.
That's
right?
Correct. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
All right. Are these two part of larger changes? Because you've talked about doing away with council super districts and instead going to 13 single member districts on the council in some of our past discussions. So do you think that the framework for city politics is in need of changes at this point?
Well, I still think that the whole super district makeup, which came about as a result of a federal court case, super districts, they are essentially half of the city. I recall when I ran in 2015 for the first time, I was just exhausted, basically having to campaign half of the city. And once someone mentioned to me, well, you do realize that a super district is basically larger than most U.S. cities. If we look at the fact that Memphis has about 650,000 residents, most U.S. cities don't have 325,000 residents. Mm-hmm. But ideally, single member districts would allow elected officials to be closer to the people that they represent. I do realize that getting a federal court case modified in any type of manner would have been an expensive, or could potentially have been an expensive and time-consuming proposition to do so. It's not like, because we have the federal court case that created the super districts, it's that same federal court case that we'd have to go back to the federal courts to get it changed. and I don't know if I don't know the whole mechanics behind doing so. This was just a different way to try to achieve something different.
Okay. As your proposal stands now on extending the current 2 consecutive term limit to 3 consecutive terms, the way that you've drafted it, it would not apply to the mayor's office. And that was a very specific move on your part. Tell me why you would not include the mayor's office in extending to 3 consecutive terms.
Yeah, I made an attempt a few years ago, Bill, as you may recall, to try to provide a little bit more authority that the council has. I've made the comment often that the Memphis City Council, and this was even before I was on the council, I recall sometimes that I would blame the Memphis City Council for decisions that were made, not knowing that it was ultimately the mayor's decision from a contracting standpoint. What I mean by that, the council approves a budget. Individual contracts in general do not have to come back before the council for approval. So we have a weak council, strong mayor form of government. And one of the things that I try to do, I don't put names on these measures. I want this to be in place regardless of whom the individual council members or mayors may be. I still want to say for the record, if this fails and I'm off the council next year, fine, so be it. So this is a long-term, what I think would best help Memphis govern. So going back to the point about the strong mayor, weak council form that we have, this would give a little bit more advantage to the legislative branch of government, because what you have, the people who really run the city of Memphis aren't the elected officials. These are the career people who may be with the city 20, 25, 30 years. A lot of them, has been my experience, and you may have other council members, current council members and previous council members to say this, they can wait the elected officials out, before we can have any real type of substantive change. When citizens want things done in the city, whether it's picking up trash or picking up this site, they don't have the contact information for division heads. Most of them don't. They call the council members. But if we're really trying to make some changes, the career people, those are the ones with the power. What this will do, this will give some power back to the council to help get things done, because we're the ones that the citizens call when they have issues. Mm-hmm. And that's the basis for that. Now, one of the other things that I would add about this, and this was a comment made by my colleague, Dr. Jeff Warren, and I made these comments yesterday. And I think he's of the opinion that the mayor should be part of this as well, because it's a steep learning curve for the mayor as well. The example that I gave yesterday, Bill, is that the council meets 24 times a year. If each council meeting or each council day is 8 hours, that's 192 hours a year that we're supposed to be proficient in a job. A mayor is a full-time job. So a mayor can be proficient in 1 year, where it takes us multiple terms to be efficient in the jobs that we're doing. That's a huge difference in the legislative branch versus the executive branch. And if we look, and I'll shut up after this, if we look at how things work at the federal level, there's a term limit for the executive branch. There's no term limit for the legislative branch. If we look at the state, there's a term limit for the executive branch. There are no term limits for the legislative branch of government. What I'm not doing here is saying that we're going to eliminate term limits. I'm just saying that there's a difference in what the term limits are for the legislative branch versus the executive branch.
So city voters rejected a ballot question in 2018 to extend the 2-term limit to 3 terms for the mayor and the council. Aside from not applying this to the mayor, what do you feel like is different 3 years later? Why do you think the outcome will be different this time than it was in 2018?
Well, one thing that I hope that, and it may be hard for unless somebody who's really followed city politics to see what is different. In 2018, we didn't have COVID. One of the things that this council did when it came to COVID relief, it was the council that came up with a lot of the community help to try to get money into the pockets of small business owners, to try to get money into the pockets of people working in the hospitality industry, whether they're working in restaurants, whether they're working in the hotels, and being a very service-oriented service-oriented city that we have right now. It was the council that did that work. That wasn't from the legislative branch. So, I mean, that wasn't from the executive branch. This council, I feel, has done a good job in trying to get things done at the grassroots level, and that's something that we didn't have a track record of doing prior to that. It may not be enough to win it over, but I will say that that's something that's a major thing that's different. We had an opportunity to help dozens and dozens of organizations, whether it's MIFA, whether it's the food bank. And I'll go back to say it was the council that came up with those initiatives. Now, you have, not to take anything away from the job that the administration or the executive level take away from anything that they do. But I'd just say there are a lot of initiatives that took place, particularly as a result of COVID, that were council initiatives, which I think is different than it was in 2018.
You mentioned Councilmember Jeff Warren. He said he will try to amend this to include the mayor in the term limits. And Councilmember Worth Morgan has said he will try to amend this to have the 3-term limit not apply to the current council. Do either or both of these make this something that you cannot live with?
Well, I think if those were terms that I was amenable to, I would have had them as part of this one. I think our current mayor has already expressed he has no desire in seeking a 3rd term. Well, now he said that before we had this provision in place, but I think that early on he may have been on record to basically say his intent was to serve 8 years or 2 terms. Mm-hmm. Now, so my response to, and like I said, this is not about this. I'm doing this without names in place. For the record, and I have to say it again, if this fails and I'm off the council next year, fine. Early on, you may recall, there was consideration that I had of going to the county commission. So if this is not me wanting to continue an indefinite political career. I think that there's still great work to be done on the Memphis City Council, and that's why I'm looking to do this. Another thing that I would add to, Bill, is that when this measure first came about, voters did not have a choice to say whether it was going to be 2 4-year terms or 3 4-year terms, or even 4 4-year terms. It was a ballot item that was presented with 2 4-year terms. It was either up or down. It could be one of those things where we could have had the same outcome if it would have been presented to the voters that they had the opportunity to approve 3 4-year terms. We will never know.
Let's move to partisan primaries. Give me your case for partisan primaries in city elections. And as you mentioned about you explored a bid for county commission, and the county commission, of course, has partisan primaries.
Correct. And so, the part of my deciding not to go onto the county side was really, Bill, the county commission, when you talk about the fact that they have committee meetings a week before their regular meetings, and that the regular meetings are twice a month, in essence, the county commission meets 1 time a week or 4 times a month. I just saw the responsibilities that I have in my full-time job really wasn't going to afford me the time that I felt I would want to commit to the county commission in that role. That was the only reason that I decided not to run for that seat. And in doing so, I do realize that it would have been a primary a Democratic primary that we would have to win. But one of the things that what we will not have, what this will prevent, it will prevent us from having to have, particularly in the single member races, runoffs. If you have one person from one party and one person from the other party in a head-to-head contest between two candidates. As I mentioned in the meeting yesterday, Memphis is Shelby County, particularly Memphis. Memphis is a blue city, and I think that there's certain ideals that, not necessarily saying that we have to have strong partisan type of ideals about things, but when we look at the state in which we live right now, we're looking at a majority party that has criminalized homelessness. There are certain values that Republicans hold. There are certain values that Democrats hold. I think that we, being the compassionate city that we are, we tend to lean towards those ideals of helping people, of working people, of rights for workers, and other ideals that I think that are central to the Democratic Party. And I think that people who are electing their leadership in Memphis, they should know which of these ideals that a particular candidate is going to enter office with.
You got an earful from your Republican colleagues on the council to the effect of partisan primaries have really messed up the Shelby County Commission, and that council members with an R or a D by their name will get squeezed, so to speak, on a regular basis by their respective local parties to toe the party line on all sorts of things. What do you think of that?
Well, I can't speak for. I disagree with that assessment of things because, as was mentioned yesterday, I think my colleague, Councilman Smiley, indicated this. We already know who's a D and who's an R on the Memphis City Council. It wouldn't change anything in that respect, in my opinion, Bill. You have individuals on the county commission. It's not about, I don't think it's anything about they're having a D and an R beside their name that is causing whatever is causing my colleagues to have that assessment about the county commission. If you ask the county commissioners, for the most part, I think that they have a good relationships. Now you have some of them that may go into their corners on certain issues, but you have that on the city council, even without having partisan elections in place already.
Mm-hmm. In the time we have remaining, let's talk about the budget quickly. Your initial thoughts as chairman of the budget committee on what you heard yesterday from the mayor.
What I heard yesterday from the mayor, I'm eager to see the details of it. When we look at one of the things I recall in it was we have higher than projected local sales tax revenues and as well as online sales tax to the tune of about $26 million. And the mayor has already made his recommendations on how that money should be spent. I'm eager to see the details about that and then see some of the other line items. What I'm also eager to see, and he mentioned it yesterday, there is some increased funding for MATA. One of the things that I want to see, and he talked about addressing blight. You may recall in a meeting or two ago, there were some issues about how clean the city is. I want to see more details about that. Something that I want to explore and think about, Bill, is how we treat solid waste. I feel that the four basic services that any city provides are going to be police, fire, transportation, and then solid waste removal, solid waste pickup. However, when we talk about, we don't have a special fund for police and fire that we do for solid waste, because we realize that the general fund takes care of all of that. Somebody who pays a $30 solid waste fee, they pay that fee whether they make $12,000 a year or whether they make $120,000 a year. So I want to see some type of analysis. If we cannot have, why can't we have that $360 part of the general fund rate, and we use the revenue fund for solid waste? We use that to supplement what would be the general fund. I would like, because the way that it stands right now, it's a regressive type of tax, because people who make $12,000 a year, they're paying the same as somebody who makes $120,000 or even $500,000. So I would want to take a closer look at that and determine, are we doing enough in solid waste? Because I've made the remark before, the city of Memphis is as dirty as we've ever seen it. And I think that we're stretched, but I think that we may not have enough resources in order to make Memphis the clean city that many people here in Memphis, many people in Memphis recall and want to get us back to.
Okay. A final point. How will your process work for the review? And we should review for people here and say this is a $750 million operating budget proposal and a $95 million capital budget proposal. So how is this process of reviewing that going to work for the council?
It'll be the same as it's been throughout the time that I've been on the council. We'll hear the capital and improvement part of the budget, and we're going to start the hearings the day after the county primaries, which is going to be May 4th. So we'll hear those the proposals for those capital projects first. We'll go through that and make any amendments if there are any necessary, and then we'll hear from the operating side. So we'll have each of the city divisions to come in and really talk about what their recommendations are for this next fiscal year.
Well, you've made my day after the election extra busy with that, because Mayor Harris over on the county side will be presenting his budget proposal to the county commission in committees that day. So at least I'll be on the same street, just different sides of it at different times. We have been talking with Memphis City Council member Martavius Jones. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.